"I require a wife by the 12th of next month," the Duke of Elverton said, "and I am told you are sensible. Those are the whole of my qualifications for you, Miss Wren, and I will not insult you by inventing others." The woman on the other side of the vicarage parlor did not faint, or blush, or laugh, or send for her aunt. She finished threading her needle, set it down, and said, "Then you had better tell me what happens on the 12th of next month, your grace, since it appears I am to be part of it." Ambrose Kell had rehearsed this interview in a carriage for 11 miles, and had not rehearsed that. "My brother and his wife were drowned 14 months ago," he said. "Their boat went over on the lake at Elverton in a squall. They left 2 children, Frederick, who is 9, and Iris, who is 6, and they left them to me, in a will drawn before I was thought fit to be trusted with a dog. I am their guardian, and I am also, since the funeral, the Duke of Elverton, which I never expected to be and did not want. I am sorry. Do not be yet. Their mother's mother is Lady Grizzle Havard. She has applied to Chancery to have the wardship removed from me and given to her, on the ground that Elverton is a bachelor's house, that I am a man of cold and irregular habits, and that the children are neglected." He heard his own voice go flat, which was what it did instead of shaking. 2 of those 3 things are true. The neglect is not. But she has letters from a dismissed nurse and the sympathy of a great many people, and my counsel tells me that the single answer that will end the matter in a morning is a settled household with a wife in it. Hence the 12th. That is the day the master is appointed. Thomasina Wren looked at him. She was 26, in a brown gown, with brown hair pinned back so plainly that it seemed almost a statement, and a face nobody would call handsome and nobody would ever have to look at twice. He had seen her 3 times, at a harvest supper, holding 4 shawls, at a subscription concert, holding 2 shawls and a fan, and at his brother's funeral, standing at the back of the church, the only person present who had thought to bring a dry handkerchief for anybody else. "You have not asked me anything about myself," she said. "I know what I need to. You keep your aunt's house and are not paid for it. You have no fortune. You taught the blacksmith's daughters their letters for 2 years without being thanked. You did not weep at my brother's funeral, and you did not enjoy it either, which puts you in a minority of about 4. He set his gloves down on his knee. "Miss Wren, I am aware exactly how this offer sounds. I am offering you rank, a great house, and an income of your own settled absolutely on you, in exchange for standing in a church and afterwards living in the same building as me. I am not offering affection. I do not have any to spare, and I would rather say so now than let you discover it in a year." "That is not true, or you would not be sitting in a vicarage in February begging." "I am not begging." "You are, your grace," said Thomasina Wren. "You are doing it very well with your gloves on your knee, but I have watched a good many people want things in this room, and I know what it looks like." She folded her hands. "I have 2 conditions and 1 question." Ambrose discovered that his mouth was dry. "Name them." "First, I will not be brought into that house as a piece of evidence. If those children are to be shown a woman in the drawing-room to satisfy a lawyer, and set aside afterwards, then I will not do it, because they have already lost 2 people, and I will not be the 3rd. If I come to stay, and I stay whatever Chancery does. If you lose and Lady Grizzle takes them, I shall still be your wife, and you will still have me at your breakfast table for 40 years with nothing gained by it. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," he said. It came out before he had examined it. "Second, you will not lie to me. Not kindly, not for my own good, not about money, nor about the children, nor about yourself. I would rather be told a hard thing at 8 in the morning than protected until Tuesday." Her chin was very slightly raised. "And the question is this: why has nobody else refused you? A duke wanting a wife by the 12th of the month may have had any woman in the county. Why are you in my aunt's parlor?" Ambrose Kell sat with the fire ticking, and a canary of some description going on in the next room, and gave her the truth, because she had just made him promise to. "Because I have asked 2 others," he said. The first accepted, and then her father read the chancery papers and withdrew her. He did not care to have his daughter's name in a suit about neglected children. The second refused me herself in this same week, and told me, quite justly, that she had no wish to be a nursemaid to another woman's family in a house full of a dead man's things. He looked at his hands. "And because on the day we buried my brother, you crossed the whole width of that church to give a handkerchief to a boy of 9 who was trying not to cry in front of 200 people. And then you went away again and did not speak to him, because you understood that being spoken to would have finished him. Nobody else in England thought of it. I have thought of it every day since." The room was quiet for a while. "You are third choice, Miss Wren," Ambrose said. "That is the truth you asked for. I am sorry for it." Thomasina Wren picked up her needle again. "Third is the best of the 3, she said. "The first 2 wanted to be duchesses. Very well, your grace. The 12th. They were married on the 11th, in the small church at Elverton, with 6 people present, and no breakfast to speak of. She wore grey silk because there had not been time for anything else, and because she said white on a woman of 26 in a hurry would only make the servants talk. Ambrose gave her his mother's ring, which was too large, and she wore it on her thumb for the rest of the day without comment. The children were not brought to the church. That had been his decision, and it was, he understood later, the worst of the several hundred bad decisions he made that year. He took her home in the afternoon. Elverton Hall came up out of the park grey and enormous, with all the blinds still at half-mast, 14 months after, and Thomasina looked at it for a long moment through the carriage window. "How many rooms are shut?" she asked. 1921. "And their mother's rooms?" "Locked." "Who has the key?" "I have." "Not the housekeeper?" "I have it," Ambrose said, and heard how it sounded and did not take it back. The household was drawn up in the hall, 41 people, and at the front of them Mrs. Tamsett, the housekeeper, and beside her the nurse, Nan Cobb, and in front of the nurse the 2 children. Frederick stood with his hands behind his back in a black coat that had been let down twice, staring at a point 3 feet to the left of his new aunt's head. Iris held the nurse's skirt with one fist and looked at the floor. "Frederick," Ambrose said, "Iris, this is her grace." Nothing whatever happened. "Say good afternoon," Ambrose said, and heard the coldness in it, and could not for his life find another way to say it. "Good afternoon, your grace," said Frederick, to the point 3 feet to the left. Iris said nothing. Iris had said nothing to anyone but her brother for 14 months. Ambrose felt his wife of 6 hours move past him. She did not stoop, or coo, or hold out her arms. She went down onto the flagstones in her grey silk in front of the whole assembled household, arranging her skirts as though she meant to be there some time, until her eyes were lower than the little girl's. "I am Thomasina," she said. "I have come to live here, and I do not know where anything is. I do not know where the back stairs go, or which of the dogs bites, or where the sun comes in the morning, and I am too old to find out by myself." She put her hands in her lap. "You need not talk to me, but if you would take me to the room with the best window, I should be very grateful, because I mean to sit in it every day, and I would hate to choose wrong." There was a silence of perhaps 5 seconds, during which Ambrose Kell became aware of his own heartbeat. Then Iris let go of the nurse's skirt, walked forward, and put 2 fingers into Thomasina Wren's hand. "It's the yellow room," said Frederick, still staring at the wall in a voice that had gone badly wrong in the middle. "It faces east. She liked it." "Then that is the one," said Thomasina, and got up, and did not look at anybody in triumph, least of all at her husband, which was, Ambrose thought afterwards, when he was able to think about it at all, the moment the whole of his life quietly changed direction without asking his permission. She did not try to be their mother, and that, Ambrose came to see, was the whole of her method. She did not kiss them. She did not ask Iris to speak. She never once said "poor lamb," which was the phrase that had emptied the nursery of 2 nurses already. What she did was much stranger and far more effective. She began, quite openly, to need them. She could not remember the names of the dogs, so Frederick was required to write them out and pin the list inside the door of the gun room, and to test her weekly, and to be severe about her failures. She was hopeless at the back stairs, so Iris took her round them twice, 3 times, 4, holding 2 of her fingers and then a whole hand, and then walking ahead. She declared the still room accounts a disgrace, and said she could not add them without a person to read the figures aloud, and Frederick read them aloud for an hour and a half, and came down to dinner arguing about the price of candles, which was the first opinion anybody had heard from him since the funeral. Ambrose watched all of it from a distance. He did not know how to close. He had been raised by a father who considered affection a kind of leak. His elder brother Piers had been the warm one, the loud one, the one who could go into a room and make it laugh, and Ambrose had been the second son who was good at figures, and was told so as an insult. He had been 31 when he last had a conversation with his father that was not about Elise. He had loved his brother helplessly and had never told him, and now his brother was in the ground with his wife beside him, and their 2 children were in Ambrose's house being taught the names of the dogs by a stranger he had married on 11 days' notice. "You are hovering in doorways again," Thomasina said to him one evening in March. "I am not." "You have been standing in that one for 4 minutes. Iris counted." Ambrose came in. Iris was on the hearth rug with a slate. Frederick had the still room book. The fire had been built up in a manner Mrs. Tamsett would certainly complain about. "Come and sit down," his wife said. "You are wanted." "For what?" "Iris cannot make a proper B, and neither can I. And you write the best hand in the county, because your father made you copy out sermons, which you told me in the carriage, and which I have been saving up." He sat down on the rug. It was an absurd place for a Duke of 140 to sit, and his knees objected, and Iris moved her slate 3 inches towards him without looking up, which was the first thing she had ever offered him. They did B for a quarter of an hour, then D, which is harder. He held the slate pencil over her hand once lightly to show the turn of it, and felt her whole small body go still, and then deliberately lean. Afterwards, in the corridor, Ambrose had to stand for a moment with his hand against the paneling. "You knew," he said when his wife came out. "You knew she would let me." "I hoped." "Why did you not say?" "Because if I had told you it might happen, you would have gone in there wanting it," Thomasina said, "and she would have felt you wanting it, and children cannot bear to be needed like that when they are frightened. It has to be about the letter B." She straightened a picture that did not need straightening. "You are not cold, Your Grace. You are careful. It is not the same thing, and I wish somebody had told you so 30 years ago." He did not answer. He could not. Frederick was the harder one, and it came to a head in April at the lake. Ambrose had forbidden the lake. He had forbidden it the week after the funeral, in so many words, and the boathouse had been chained. In April, a hot Tuesday came and Frederick was found by a gardener standing at the end of the jetty in his shirt sleeves with his boots off, quite calm, looking down at the water. And Ambrose, being sent for, came at a run, and did the worst thing he had ever done in his life. He shouted. He shouted at a boy of 9 on a jetty about disobedience, and the chain on the boathouse and the trouble he gave, standing in the sun with his own hands shaking, because he had run 300 yards believing he was going to have to go into that water after the last 2 people his brother had left him. And Frederick stood there and took it white-faced, and then said, in a small, clear voice, "I wanted to see how deep it was. Nobody will tell me how deep it was," and walked past him up the lawn. Ambrose sat down on the jetty and stayed there some while. She found him there an hour later. She did not say it is not your fault, which he could not have borne, and she did not say anything about the shouting. "How deep is it?" she said. 9 feet at the boathouse, 22 in the middle. He said it to the water. They were found in 11. The squall came off the west and the boat went over and Piers could swim and she could not, and he did not leave her, and that is how it was, and nobody has told him because nobody could get the words out, including me. And so he has spent 14 months making it up in his head, and what he has made up is worse. "Yes," his wife said, "it always is." He is 9. He is 9 and he already knows the worst thing that will ever happen to him. He does not need protecting from the facts, Ambrose. He needs somebody to hand them to him and then stay in the room. She sat down on the jetty beside him, in her good gown, on wet boards. "You must do it, not me. I can teach him the dogs' names. Only you can tell him about his father, because you are the only person left who loved him." It was the first time she had used his name. He noticed it. He noticed it for years. He told Frederick that night in the gun room with the lamp between them, and it took an hour and 20 minutes, and it was the hardest hour and 20 minutes of Ambrose Kell's life. He gave him all of it, the squall, the depth, the boat, that his father could have swum to the reeds and had not, and why. He answered every question, including the ones about the recovery, which he answered plainly and without ornament, and he did not once say that his brother was in a better place, because he did not believe it, and had promised somebody he would not lie. At the end of it, Frederick said, "Was he frightened?" "I think he was very frightened," Ambrose said, "and I think he stayed anyway, and that is not the same as not being frightened. It is better." And Frederick Kell put his head down on the gun-room table and cried for 11 minutes, and his uncle sat with a hand between his shoulder blades and let him, and did not once tell him to stop. Thomasina was outside on a chair in the passage, as she had said she would be, with a candle and a book she had not read a word of. When Ambrose came out, she stood up. He did not say anything. He put his arms round her in the passage and held on clumsily, all elbows, like a man who has been handed something he was never taught to carry. And she stood quite still and let him, with the candle held out sideways so as not to set fire to either of them. And after a long moment, her free hand came up and rested flat between his shoulders. "You did that," she said. "You made me." "I told you to. That is different, and you may have the whole of the credit, and I shall never mention it again as long as we both live." A pause. Her voice was not steady. "That is a lie. I shall mention it constantly." In May, he gave her the key. He did it badly, of course. He put it on the breakfast table beside her cup without a word, and went out to the stables, and stayed there 2 hours. And when he came back, the blinds of the whole east front had been raised, and the windows of his sister-in-law's rooms were open, and a girl was beating a rug on the terrace, and Iris was sitting on the floor of her mother's dressing room with a hairbrush and a workbox and a length of blue ribbon in her lap. Ambrose stood in the doorway. 14 months of shut air had gone out of the room, and there was sun in it, and the smell of dust and lavender, and faintly of somebody's scent. "Should I not have?" his wife said quietly behind him. "I have not been in this room since the funeral." "I know. They took there were things I could not," he stopped. "You need not go in today. Thomasina said. You need not go in this year. I only thought that she is 6, and in 3 years she will not be able to remember her mother's face, and there are 9 years of her mother's letters in that desk in her mother's hand, and I should like her to have them when she is 20, and they cannot be kept in a locked room because locked rooms are where things are forgotten on purpose. She hesitated. I have not thrown anything away. I have not moved a single thing except the blinds. Iris chose the ribbon. She has been holding it for an hour. Ambrose went in. He crossed to the window and stood looking out at the lake, and after a while he became aware that his niece had got up and come and stood against his leg, and was holding up the blue ribbon. Yes, he said when he could. Very pretty. Shall we ask your aunt to put it in? Iris turned round and held it up to Thomasina, and Thomasina knelt on the boards of the sunny, dusty room and did the girl's hair with the blue ribbon in it, badly, with too many pins. Thank you, said Iris. 2 words, aloud, the first in 14 months. Nobody made anything of it. That was the extraordinary part, and it was his wife's doing entirely. She said, You are welcome. Hold still, I have made a hedgehog of the back of your head, and went on pinning, and Iris went on holding still, and Ambrose Kell stood at the window with the sun on him and his hand over his mouth, and understood, with a completeness that frightened him, that he had married the best person he had ever met, and had told her on the day he asked her that he had no affection to spare. The letter from Lady Grizzle Havard's attorneys came in the first week of June. The commission would sit at Elverton Hall on the 23rd. Her ladyship would attend in person, with counsel, and would bring witnesses, and would be pleased to examine the children apart from his grace and apart from her grace, as was proper. There were 19 days, and Ambrose spent the first 4 of them behaving like a man preparing a defense, and the 5th being taken apart by his wife over the breakfast things. You have written to the vicar, she said. I have asked him for a letter as to the regularity of the household, and to Sir Marcus about the school subscription, and to your steward about the cottages, and to Dr. Pine for a certificate that Iris is in health. She set down the coffee pot. Ambrose, you are getting up a case. They will smell it from the drive. Lady Grizzle's counsel will read out 9 testimonials in that library, and every one of them will make us look like people who required 9 testimonials. Then what would you have me do? Nothing. I would have you do exactly what you have been doing since March, and let them come and look at it. She began calmly to sort his letters into 2 piles. This one goes. This one goes. The doctor's certificate may stay because it is a fact and not an opinion. The vicar may come to dinner as he does every Thursday, and if the commissioners are here on a Thursday, they will see him at his usual chair, and that is worth more than his letter. She pushed the smaller pile back at him. You cannot prove you are a good guardian. You can only be one in front of witnesses, and you have 4 months of it behind you, and it is either enough or it is not. Ambrose looked at the 2 piles for some while. You are very cool about it, he said. I am not cool about it at all. I was awake until 3. She said it without self-pity, buttering. But I have watched clever men lose things by explaining, and I would rather we lost by being ourselves, if we must lose. He put down his cup. There is a thing I have to say to you, and I have been putting it off for 9 days. Then say it before Iris comes down, because she reads faces. If it goes against us, Ambrose said, the children go to Havard House in September. That is the whole of it. There will be nothing further to be done, and no appeal worth the money, and I shall be a duke of 41 alone in a house of 41 servants, with a wife he married for a hearing that he lost. He made himself go on. My attorney has raised the question of what should be done for you in that event. There is a provision, a separate establishment, the Coombe House, the income doubled, your own carriage, and no expectation of any kind. It would be done quietly, and nobody would think the worse of you. You would be a duchess with a house of your own at 26, and the whole of your life back. Thomasina put down the knife. Is that what you want? No. Then why in heaven's name are you offering it? Because you made me promise not to lie to you, Ambrose said, and I could not sit at this table for another day knowing there was a door in the wall behind you that you had not been shown. You had one condition, on the first day. You said you would not be brought into that house as a piece of evidence and set aside afterwards. I have thought about that sentence every night for 4 months. I'm not going to set you aside, but I will not have you stay because you were never told there was a way out. She was quiet a moment. Out in the passage, a door went, and Iris's feet, and Frederick telling her something about the dogs in a tone of enormous authority. Ambrose, his wife said, look at me. He looked at her. On the 11th of March, I stood in a church and said a number of things in front of 6 people, and I meant every one of them, which I understand is not the general custom. Her color had risen. I did not say them because of a lawsuit. I said them because I was 26 and had been holding other people's shawls for 11 years, and a man came to my aunt's parlor and told me the truth 3 times in a quarter of an hour, which no one had ever done before. She folded her napkin with great precision. You may tell your attorney that the provision is declined, and that I found the offer of it insulting, and that I shall be grateful to him for the rest of my life for making you make it. Then the children came in, and nothing more was said. And Ambrose Kell went out to the estate room and sat down, and found that he was smiling in a manner that would have astonished his father. Lady Grizel Havard arrived at 11 o'clock on the 23rd in a black landau, with her counsel beside her and her maid behind. And she came up the steps of Elverton Hall like a woman, walking to a scaffold she had built herself. She was 70, upright as a fire iron, dressed in the deepest mourning Ambrose had ever seen on a living person, and she looked at the raised blinds of the east front for a long moment before she looked at anybody. The house is open, she said. Yes, ma'am. It was shut in January. I drove past. It was shut for 14 months, Ambrose said. It was my doing and it was wrong. It is open now, and I shall not pretend it was always so, because there will be evidence given today, and I would rather be the one who says it. Something moved in the old woman's face and was put away again. The commission sat in the long library, a master's clerk, 2 commissioners, Lady Grizel's counsel and Ambrose's own, and a table with the letters laid out on it. It took 3 hours, and it was, in the main, exactly as his attorney had warned him it would be. The dismissed nurse gave her evidence, and gave it honestly, which was worse than if she had lied. That in the first winter the children had dined alone every day. That his Grace had not entered the nursery for 6 weeks together. That the little girl had ceased to speak, and no physician had been called until February. That the house had been kept dark, and the servants forbidden to mention the late Duke and Duchess in the children's hearing. Is that true? Ambrose's counsel asked him, in front of the room, having warned him what he would ask. Every word, Ambrose said. His counsel had wanted him to explain. He did not explain. He sat with his hands on his knees and let it stand, because his wife had told him the previous night, in the corridor outside the yellow room, that the only thing that could lose them the case was a clever answer. Then Lady Grizel's counsel rose and said that the marriage of the 12th of March was a device, that her Grace of Elverton was a clergyman's niece of no fortune procured for the purposes of this very hearing, that the whole establishment was a piece of scenery erected within 4 months, and that the commissioners had only to ask the children which of the 2 houses they would rather live in. By all means, said the senior commissioner, ask them. They were brought in separately, Frederick first. Ambrose was required to withdraw and did, and stood in the passage outside the library door for 19 minutes with his back against the paneling, and afterwards could not have said what he thought about, because he did not think. He learned what had been said only later, in the transcript, and read it perhaps 40 times in the course of his life. Q. Do you know why we are here? A. To decide who has us. Q. That is honest. Are you happy at Elverton, Master Kell? A. No, sir. My father and mother are dead. Q. Quite so. Let me ask it differently. Are you well used here? A. Yes. Q. In the first winter, we are told, you dined alone and your uncle did not come to the nursery for 6 weeks. A. That is true. Q. And you forgive him that? A. I did not say that, sir. I said it was true. He was in the estate room and Mrs. Tamsett said he sat with the papers and did not go to bed. I saw the candle from the nursery window. I thought he did not care and I hated him for a year. I was wrong. He was doing the same as me, only in a different room, and nobody had told either of us that the other one was doing it. Q. Who told you? A. My aunt. Q. Her Grace. A. Yes. Q. She has been here 4 months. A. Yes, sir. Q. Master Kell, if this commission were to send you and your sister to your grandmother, in a warm house, with a nursery governess and your mother's own people about you, what would you say? A. I should say that my sister did not speak for 14 months, and that she speaks now, and she began in this house, in my mother's dressing room, with a blue ribbon in her hand, and she said thank you, and it was to my aunt. And I should say that my uncle told me how deep the lake was when nobody else would, and stayed while I cried about it, which is the hardest thing anybody has ever done for me. And I should ask you please not to make me start again with new people, sir, because I do not think I could do it twice. Then Iris. She was 6. She came in holding a slate. She was asked her name and gave it. She was asked whether she was happy and did not answer. She was asked, gently, 3 times, whether she would like to live with her grandmother. The clerk's note read, the child made no reply, but crossed the room to Lady Grizzle Havard and gave her the slate, upon which was written in a child's hand, please come and live here instead. The word instead is so spelt. The commission adjourned for 1/4 of an hour, and did not come back for 50 minutes, because Lady Grizzle Havard could not be moved from the window at the end of the library, where she stood with her back to the room holding a slate in both hands and shaking, and would not have her maid, and would not have her counsel, and in the end had nobody at all, until a woman in a plain gray gown came and stood beside her and put a hand under her elbow, and said nothing whatever for 11 minutes. Ambrose saw that much through the half-open door. He never forgot it. The suit was dismissed at 4 o'clock, with an observation from the senior commissioner about the first winter that Ambrose accepted standing, and a further observation about the present state of the household that he could not accept at all, because it was not his to accept. Lady Grizzle stayed to dinner. She stayed 3 weeks. She came back in September and at Christmas, and for 2 months every spring for the remaining 9 years of her life, and she and Thomasina between them ran the household in an alliance that Ambrose described to his steward as the most efficient and least restful arrangement in the county. On the second night of that first visit, she said to him, over the port, with no preamble, I did not want your wardship, Elverton. I wanted somebody to be punished, and you were to hand. She turned her glass. My daughter is dead. Somebody must be at fault, and it cannot be the weather, so I made it you. That is the whole of my case, and it was worth precisely nothing, and a person of 6 has just spelt instead wrongly at me and undone it in 4 seconds. Her mouth was perfectly steady. You will not refer to this again. No, ma'am. "Your wife," said Lady Grizzle Havard, "is worth 9 of you. I imagine you know." "I do," Ambrose said. "I have not told her." "Then you are a fool as well as a bachelor, and only one of those is curable." He went to find her that night, and could not, and found her at last at 1 in the morning in the yellow room, in her wrapper, asleep in the window seat with her cheek against the shutter, and a work-basket in her lap, and a length of blue ribbon over her wrist, having sat up to be near the nursery, because Iris had had a bad hour after all the strangers. Ambrose Kell stood in the doorway with his candle, and looked at his wife of 4 months, and thought about the 11 days, and about the 12th of the month, and about the sentence, "I am not offering affection. I do not have any to spare," and considered that he had said it in a vicarage parlor to the only woman who had ever unlocked a single door in him, and that she had accepted him anyway on those terms, and had never once since asked him for more. She always woke badly, all at once, like a soldier. Iris, asleep 2 hours. He came in and set the candle down. "Thomasina, I must tell you a thing, and I am very bad at it, and I would be obliged if you would not help me." She sat up and put the work-basket aside and folded her hands, and did not help him, which he thought at the time was cruelty, and afterwards understood was the greatest courtesy of his life. "I married you for the 23rd of June, he said. "You knew it, and I told you so, and I was honest, and I have thought since that honesty can be a very cheap thing when a man is only being honest about how little he intends to feel." He made himself look at her. "The case is decided. There is no more use for a wife in this house. Everything I said in that parlor has been spent, and there is nothing owing on either side, and so I am going to say the rest of it now, when it cannot possibly be to my advantage. I love you, not gratefully, or not only. I loved you before the commission, and I have known it since the night I came out of the gun room and put my arms round you in a passage like a man falling over. I love the way you make my nephew argue about candles. I love that you knelt on flagstones in your wedding gown in front of 41 servants, and did not once look at me to see whether I had noticed. I love that you told me not to lie to you before you told me your own name." His voice went. He let it. "I have no idea how to be married. I was raised by a man who thought fondness was a leak in the roof. I shall be careful and silent and standing in doorways for the rest of my life, and you will have to come and get me out of them. But I would like it on the record, Thomasina, that I did not marry you for love, and that I am asking now, 4 months late, whether you will let me stay married to you for it." Thomasina Wren, Duchess of Elverton, looked at him for what felt to Ambrose like a geological age. "You are third choice," she said. "I have never minded. Do you know why?" "No." "Because the other 2 were asked for the 12th of the month," she said, "and I am the one who was asked for the 23rd of June, and the ribbon, and the letter B, and the 9 feet at the boathouse." She held out her hand to him. "I have loved you since the jetty, you impossible man. Come and sit down. You are hovering in a doorway." He came and sat down. She put her hand against the side of his face, which nobody had done in 20 years, and he shut his eyes, and the candle burned down in the yellow room while 2 people who had married on 11 days' notice began, very late and very carefully, at the beginning. They had 31 years. Iris talked in the end, more than any other member of the household, and married a naval surgeon at 23, and named her first daughter Thomasina, and kept 9 years of her mother's letters in a rosewood box, and a blue ribbon pressed flat inside the lid of it. Frederick came into the title at 28, which he had never wanted, and which his uncle had spent 19 years teaching him to carry, and the 2 of them wrote to one another every week until the end. The east front blinds were never lowered again in Ambrose Kell's lifetime, except once, and he raised them himself the following morning. And on the last evening of the last summer, sitting out on the terrace with a rug over his knees and his wife beside him, with the still-room book she had never once managed to add up alone. Ambrose said, "I was told you were sensible." "You were told correctly." "It was the least accurate description in the history of the county," said the Duke of Elverton, and put out his hand, and she took it, and they sat there while the light went off the lake, which was 9 feet deep at the boathouse and 22 in the middle, and which their children's children swam in every August without the smallest idea that anyone had ever been afraid of it.